Hello there, this is another edition of What's Happening in Brazil, a show in which you find out more about facts and curiosities in the country. And let's start with the latest events of the week.
Last week, Brazil witnessed numerous anti-racist and anti-fascist demonstrations on social media as well as on the streets of the country. In São Paulo, organized soccer fans from different teams gathered to stop a pro-Jair Bolsonaro demonstration against social isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic. The anti-fascist protest was severely repressed by the police force. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the president has supported anti-democratic demonstrations requesting the closing down of Congress and the return of a military dictatorship. Last Sunday, Bolsonaro posted a screenshot from Donald Trump on Twitter, saying that Antifa would be classified as a terrorist organization. In Rio de Janeiro, protesters joined forces in defense of Black lives. The demonstration took place amongst a wave of protests in the U.S. in response to George Floyd's death suffocated by the police. In Brazil, protesters asked for the end of young black people's executions in the favelas. This month, João Pedro, a 14-year-old boy, was killed during a police operation. He was at home when he was shot. The case has brought about uprisings all over the country, and movements have put together many initiatives to denounce black people's genocide in the country. The Landless Workers Movement, MST by its Portuguese acronym, launched an emergency plan for an agrarian reform in defense of Brazilian people's lives. Members of the movement state that the COVID-19 pandemic, which affects mainly the most vulnerable workers, aggravates capitalism crisis, reaching the economy, politics, society, and nature. To combat the situation, the movement defends the democratization of access to land, distribution of wealth, and human rights of rural workers. Practical measures were presented, such as the settlement of thousands of families and the seizing of land from those in debt with the federal government. The proposal aims at generating jobs while guaranteeing healthy food for all.
With fear and uncertainty about the future, amidst the critical stage of the pandemic in Brazil, Brazilian families and religious institutions have been maintaining virtual meetings and organizing prayer sessions from their homes to practice their faith. For today's Cultural Talk, Brasil de Fato talks to followers from different religions who defend that the effective and spiritual union between families and communities exceed the need for physical presence and face-to-face interaction.
Faith is something that cannot be defined or shaped. We do not format one's faith. So I've intensified our prayers, appeals, and offerings to our orishas so that we can remain strong.
People with their own rights, and a lot of us who did not even have a specific right were a little aloof. So we see it as a moment to cultivate our religious beliefs. If you look into the essence of these rights, they all say the same, but in different ways. And that's become even more self-evident. People are letting their guards down, even amongst their families.
Of course, face-to-face meetings are much more enjoyable, right? Because we talk a lot more, hug, and stay together, which is something also very much needed. But not because you are in the place where the presence of God is. Sacred places, for me, are all places from the moment I want to be talking to God.
It's a chain that goes much more beyond the physical presence. It is a spiritual force that the presence has caused upon us too.
I've used electronic media as well to communicate. Social media, WhatsApp groups, these places activate people's memories.
We bring in things that can work as a symbol for everybody, right? We suggest that each person put a glass of water to be blessed through our faith. This is not something just material, but also brings a spiritual question. And we have been trying this moment of light and hope within our families, right?
With the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic in Brazil, the peripheries of large cities have achieved the largest mortality rates by viruses in the country. With the majority of this population living in precarious houses and depending on the income from informal labor, solidarity networks have been a solution for many living in these regions.
Brasilândia is a borough in the north side of São Paulo, the largest in Brazil. The region lists first in the ranking of COVID-19 casualties in the city. Ana Sueli works as an activist in the neighborhood, fighting against domestic violence. During the pandemic, the group has expanded its focus.
The question of famine is exposed in a very cruel way, because it is as if the famine was hidden with walls and suddenly surfaced a lot. So it is very grave.
Another group that has adapted its reach due to the pandemic was the Protection and Resistance Against Genocide Network.
First of all, we don't want to die of hunger, not of COVID. So our major concern has been this emergency. A lot of people like me have been laid off and have not been working. So since the pandemic, we have been gathering to promote all kinds of actions, collecting food, hygiene kits, covers, clothes, and organizing the distribution of basic food baskets.
According to Data Favela, 7 out of 10 people living in the outskirts do not have savings to face this crisis during not even a week. Another serious factor is the historical habitation issue in the outskirts.
We've been discussing staying at home, warning people to do so. But we also understand there are limits to it. There are limits for those who live under inhumane conditions, without proper ventilation, sharing a 2-room home with 10 people.
According to these specialists in public administration, the pandemic has surfaced the history of insufficient government investments and actions in the outskirts.
Despite solidarity playing an absolutely essential role now, mainly the solidarity that exceeds class structures, we have to speak up and demand public policies to guarantee that this population has access to healthcare, education, and cultural assets. Because, for instance, how is this population going to live after the pandemic?
And in Brazilianism today, you will see a lot of good food and music.
Hello, it's me again. Today I'll prepare a very simple recipe, a raw salad. As usual, I will be using the produce from the basic food basket I received from the Landless Workers Movement. It's agroecological and pesticide-free. So today we are gonna make a salad. Before making it, about 10 minutes before starting to make it, we put some lime juice and a pinch of salt on all the ingredients. The salad is raw. We put the grated sweet potatoes that were already soaked in the lime juice and salt. Then you add the grated green papaya. Next, the chopped gherkin or okra, a little bit of cilantro, parsley, and green onions, as well as the colored green or kale. Now we are going to mix all the ingredients and add our special touch. This here is acerola pulp. You can use any other fruit, papaya, mango. It's just important that you boil the fruit beforehand and use a blender. Then, to make the dressing, you cook it with salt, pepper, and a little bit of olive or coconut oil. This dressing can be eaten with any kind of salad.
Thaís Daiane da Silva is MC Tá. In Brazilianism today, you will get to know this singer, who was born in the outskirts of São Paulo and is considered a great promise for the Brazilian music of her generation. The song we choose is very suitable for the moment we are all going through. According to the singer, it's raising a white flag for our internal conflicts. In addition to that is the presence of the orixás and a cry for freedom for the socially excluded defending their beliefs.
Abram os caminhos, abram os caminhos, abram os caminhos, abram-se os caminhos. A flecha atirei, onde caiu bradei, o céu relampeou, a chuva vai chegar, meu corpo foi ao chão, na palha pra curar, lavei a alma então. Me refiz na lama, vi pedra rolar. deixei pro mar. Me refiz na lama, vi pedra rolar. Dancei com a correnteza, me deixei pro mar. Cantar e dançar pra saudar o tempo que virá, que foi, que está. Tocar pra marcar o rito de passar, o rito de passar. Cantar e dançar pra saudar o tempo que virá, que foi, que está. Tocar pra marcar o rito de passar, o rito de passar.
And that's all for today, folks. I hope to see you all again next week.
Cantar e dançar pra saudar o tempo que virá, que foi, que está. Tocar pra marcar